Hey everybody, so last night, Susan Wojcicki, the CEO of YouTube that presided over one of the largest book burnings in human history, if not the largest, died. Now we've all seen what's happened to YouTube over the years, and how censorious it's become, and how everybody's walking on eggshells, trained like dogs with positive and negative reinforcement, to not step too far out of line, lest they be struck or demonetized. And if they play well, then they can turn their ads on and make a few measly cents. The reason I bring this up is because what we're seeing now, in the wake of Susan Wojcicki's death, is YouTube's crazy censorious nature being forcibly expanded to all sites on the internet. You might be wondering, Tim, how are they going to do that? The people at these alternative sites aren't evil. They're not going to do this willingly. Well, that's where the Online Safety Act comes into play. This was a bill passed last year, and it hasn't really come into effect yet, but they're gearing up to roll it out. And do you know what plays right into it? The rioting and the police response, the government response, the media's propaganda spin in the wake of the riots in the United Kingdom. Here's a Telegram headline: Tech giants will be forced to ban fake news under Labor plans. So this headline, tech giants will be forced to ban fake news under Labor plans, really reminds me of Article 190 and other laws in the evil Soviet Union back in the day. Section 190-1, dissemination of fabrications known to be false, which defame the Soviet political and social system. Quote, the systematic dissemination by word of mouth of deliberate fabrications which defame the Soviet political and social system, or the manufacture or dissemination in written, printed, or other form of works of the same content, shall be punished by deprivation of freedom for a term not exceeding 3 years. Wow, so it seems like the UK is doing even worse than that. Or by corrective labor for a term not exceeding 1 year, or by a fine not exceeding 100 rubles. So they're saying that, we need to expand the censorship to legal but harmful posts need to be suppressed, and if they don't, huge fines will be levied against the companies who host them. This was posted on the UK government's website, May the 8th, 2024, Online Safety Act Explainer. And it goes over what the act is. Basically, it raises the bar as far as all the features that they need all of the sites to support. It needs to have ways for users and governments to flag content, and they have to take action. A lot of stuff like this. Major platforms will need to be more transparent about which kinds of potentially harmful content they allow, and give people more control over the types of content they want to see. That's a big technical barrier to entry. And these types of things are on purpose. And then if people don't comply, then they throw the book at them. There are also reports that these companies are required to file. So social media companies and search engine companies have to tell the government, and not just the UK ones, around the world. Companies have to report back to the UK government, specifically Ofcom, the Office of Communication, the Ministry of Truth of the UK. And they have to say, here's what we're doing. Here's the content we're deleting. Here are the steps that we're doing to be proactive in making sure that your vision is forcibly shoved down everybody's throat. So I believe it mostly applies to the larger companies, but I can't say for sure. It could be for just every single company. I've seen the definitions for what constitutes a social media site, and it's like any site where somebody can post something and other people can see it, which is absurd. As you know, I have a website called groupdiscover.com, which you can join today. Save 50% with the coupon code antipoison. This would be such a headache for people like me to have to comply with. Absolutely evil what they're doing. And this is purposefully trying to prevent people from spreading information they don't like. All they have to do is frame things as, this is legal, but it's harmful. You have to delete that. It's harmful. It's harmful content. Now, there are lots of examples of harmful content that I think should be censored off social media. I'm not even going to really list too many of them here, but I'm sure I could give you a list of items and you'd be like, yeah, that should be deleted. That's horrible stuff, right? There's a lot of horrible people, horrible content. One example I'll give, there's a lot of sordid ones I won't give, One example I will give is the people who peddle terrible poisons, like Josh Sigurdson pushing the cyanogenic bitter seeds. They're bitter because they're poisonous. And he tries to make this crazy claim that they help with cancer. That somehow if people eat them, they'll have less cancer, the world will be without cancer. Absolutely evil son of a bitch. Or you have all these ivermectin shills pushing clastogenic genotoxic poison that's extremely neurotoxic. The same people who scare you about fluoride in the water or chemtrails spraying stuff. Let me tell you something. Ivermectin is extremely toxic, way more toxic than anything that's in the water, way more toxic than any glyphosate you're being exposed to. Ivermectin is extremely, extremely toxic. But they gain your trust, and then they slip in the poison. Remember, rat poison is just a small percent poison. It's mostly good, tasty food. But it only takes that little bit of poison. That's what this so-called alternative health cult, this poison cult, is all about. They'll pull you in with truthful information and then right at the last second, give you the poison pills. And then there's other poisons like methylene blue, all these PGP inhibitors that are being pushed in tandem that make these other ones even worse. The cyanogenic seeds are just especially heinous to me. So my point is there are lots of things that I think should be censored. If people are being tricked into taking poison, if people are being tricked into hurting themselves, really vile, grotesque content, like a snuff film or something, like there's stuff that should be scrubbed from the internet, if you ask me. But I feel like most of these things are already illegal. And so now they want to go after behaviors that aren't technically illegal, especially in lands that they don't control under their jurisdiction in the UK. And they just want to keep pushing that line further and further, moving the goalposts. Okay, here's your new edition of the Newspeak Dictionary. See Appendix B for what is now legal but harmful, and see Appendix A for what is now illegal. And they just keep shifting things down, making more and more things illegal. I also hate the whole premise here as to what they're using to shoehorn in this terrible law. They're using racism that leads to rioting. That's the express excuse here. And I don't have an ounce of racism in me, frankly. And so it's really hard sometimes to come to the defense of these people because this is the issue that they chose that to some of us is just so reprehensible. But the larger issue here is the free speech and everything else that they're going to say, oh, nope, that's harmful, that's harmful, that's harmful. All they have to do is say something's harmful. Basically the exact same thing as the Soviet Union, where they're like, that's dangerous. That's dangerous disinformation. This is the lingo of the Soviet Union. You know, banning fake news. That's Soviet Union shit. Especially when the fake news is actually the real news, and the government's peddling propaganda and then calling everything else fake, which is where we find ourselves. So think back about how the events unfolded of the past 2 weeks. First, there was the violence, if you believe it or not, which played right into the government's agenda. And all the agents egging people on, the controlled opposition egging people on to go out and protest and break things. They immediately started saying, oh, we need to go after social media users. They didn't skip a beat. They were like, oh, this is the product of people posting on the internet. We're going to track you down. And then the government said, it's not enough to go after the rioters. We have to also go after the people online. And it was extremely conspicuous and obvious what was going on. This was an attack at free expression on the internet. We made note of this as it was happening. And then we started seeing the arrests, especially the high-profile ones, that were being slapped all over the media. And it was stuff like these people were arrested for posting on Snapchat. It didn't lead to disorder, but it contained misinformation that made people likely to riot. And so I found that extremely conspicuous, extremely interesting, that they were talking about misinformation. That's what they were going after. I mean, there's probably hundreds of thousands of examples. And we know that they have this agenda to go after what they call misinformation, which contains a lot of truth. They want to be the ministry of truth. They want the Ofcom to be the ministry of truth. So that they can just say, oh, that's dangerous misinformation. That's legal but harmful. And they want to control all the levers of power by basically taking over the levers at the social media companies around the world. Saying, you have to censor this stuff. You have to censor that stuff. They're also bringing up terrorism in the wake in the context of what's going on in the UK. So you might remember after the whole debacle at Christchurch, they had this idea to eliminate terrorist and violent extremist content online. And they had this interesting part in here about GIF-CT. Support smaller platforms as they build capacity to remove terrorist and violent extremist content, including through sharing technical solutions in relevant databases of hashes or other relevant material, such as the GIF-CT database. So basically they want big databases that everybody has to plug into, and then they give the green or the red light. And the red light means censor the hell out of this content and strike the person. So going back to this article from The Independent, look at this. The rioting has brought last year's Online Safety Act back into the spotlight. The large bill was supposed to give authorities greater powers to crack down on illegal content shared on the internet. But it's still being hashed out. Khan is asking for it to be enhanced and fortified. He added, quote, "The way the algorithms work, the way the misinformation can spread very quickly, and disinformation, that's a cause to be concerned. We've seen a direct consequence of this. How will the act be enforced? The Office of Communications will be able to enforce the rules laid out in the Online Safety Act in a number of ways. Platforms will need to begin providing evidence to the watchdog," that's Ofcom, "of how they are meeting the set requirements. Ofcom will then evaluate and monitor these companies before deciding to take action for non-compliance. Companies can be fined up to £18 million or 10% of their revenue worldwide, whichever amounts to more. Criminal action can even be taken against senior managers who fail to ensure information requests from Ofcom are fulfilled." That's another thing I should have mentioned. All the talk recently about extraditing people who break the UK's rules. Well, it looks like they're gearing up to maybe extradite senior managers of social media companies who allow any content they deem legal but harmful. And in extreme cases, Ofcom will be able to require internet providers and advertisers to stop working with platforms, essentially banning them from operating in the country. And they're talking about Twitter and Telegram. So I think we can see where this is going, and every day it's becoming more and more clear what the agenda is. And with this all in mind, I think the initial catalyst and everything else that's followed after the fact should be called into question. This is all going according to some sort of a master plan, it seems. Some mad geniuses concocted somewhere. Some big budget think tank. And I find it extremely concerning, not just for the people trapped in Britannia, but for the people around the world who are also going to be impacted by this in huge negative ways. Now again, I hate to see people have poison pushed on them. It makes me so mad. These agents are being used for eugenics to push cyanogenic crap on you. Pushing clastogenic, genotoxic, neurotoxic crap on you. Stuff that sterilizes you. And they appeal to all of your biggest fears. Oh, you have parasites in you. Oh, you have cancer. And I'm talking about the people on social media who then peddle you the poison cure. Of course, it's not a cure. It's just fucking bullshit. These people ought to hang their heads in shame. And then there's stuff that children get exposed to, which they really shouldn't be being exposed to. There's a lot of things wrong with the internet. But I don't think this is the answer. Obviously. Having the UK controlling the internet is not the answer. And you have to wonder, what do they have planned for the next few years once they get this in place? This is a powerful tool in the arsenal of the oligarchs. All they have to do as they roll out a new agenda is frame it in such a way so that any opposition is deemed harmful. Where have we seen that before? Any opposition to their agenda is deemed harmful, hateful, etc. And then they can steamroll over all of their opposition. So thanks for watching. If you want to support this work, check out groupdiscover.com. That's my social media site with a huge number of videos and a big repository. Member users can add more videos to the repository. I add videos when I come across them or if I make them. And it's a searchable archive, and there's suggestions and recommendations, and it helps keep this work alive. Thanks for watching. Have a great rest of your day. Take care.